The year is 1945. World War II has ended, bringing relief and joy to millions. However, the end of one conflict marks the beginning of another, the Cold War. This new war, fought in the shadows, was a battle of ideology, espionage, and technology. On one side stood the United States, a champion of democracy and capitalism. On the other, the Soviet Union, a formidable communist power. The Cold War was a global struggle for dominance, a battle for hearts and minds. The threat of nuclear annihilation loomed large, casting a long shadow over the world. Military alliances like NATO and the Warsaw Pact formed, symbols of ideological solidarity. Proxy wars ignited in Korea, Vietnam and Afghanistan. Fueled by superpowers' ideological expansion, these conflicts resulted in unimaginable devastation and loss of life. At the heart of the Cold War lay a fundamental clash of ideologies. The United States championed democracy and capitalism, envisioning a world of self-governing nations and free markets. They promoted individual liberty, fearing the spread of totalitarianism. The Soviet Union adhered to communism, promoting state-controlled production and a classless society. They saw capitalism as exploitative and pointed to their successes in industrialization and social services. This ideological divide shaped the domestic and foreign policies of both superpowers. It fueled mistrust, suspicion, and ultimately, the Cold War itself. Each side believed their system was more just and equitable. This clash of ideologies defined the global landscape for decades. One of the earliest confrontations of the Cold War took place in Berlin. Germany was divided into 4 zones, each controlled by the United States, the United Kingdom, France, and the Soviet Union. Berlin, deep in the Soviet zone, was also divided. The Western Allies controlled the West, and the Soviets the East. In 1948, the Soviets blockaded all routes into West Berlin, trying to force the Western Allies out. The United States and its allies launched the Berlin airlift to supply the city by air. For over a year, they airlifted essential supplies, ensuring the city's survival. The Berlin airlift symbolized the West's commitment to freedom and hope. The blockade was lifted in May 1949, marking a significant victory for the Western Allies. As the Cold War intensified, the battleground expanded beyond Europe, reaching far-flung corners of the globe. Both superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, engaged in numerous proxy wars, supporting their respective allies in various third countries. These conflicts allowed them to confront each other indirectly, avoiding direct military conflict, which could have led to a catastrophic nuclear war. One such significant proxy war was the Korean War, which lasted from 1950 to 1953. Korea was divided along the 38th parallel, with the Communist North supported by the Soviet Union and the Democratic South by the United States. The Korean War resulted in millions of casualties, including soldiers and civilians, and ultimately ended in a stalemate, with the border remaining largely unchanged. Another major flashpoint during the Cold War was the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. The Soviet Union installed nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles off the coast of the United States, sparking a tense standoff. The world watched with bated breath as President Kennedy and Premier Khrushchev engaged in intense negotiations, eventually reaching a peaceful resolution and averting a potential nuclear war. The Cold War rivalry extended into space exploration. The space race was a competition for technological superiority between the United States and the Soviet Union. Both superpowers poured resources into their space programs, eager to demonstrate their prowess. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. The US responded with increased funding for its space program. The race reached its pinnacle in 1969 when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. This historic event was a major victory for the United States. The space race led to significant advancements in rocketry, materials science, and telecommunications. The United States pursued a policy of containment to prevent the spread of communism. This policy, articulated by George Kennan, aimed to stop the domino effect of countries falling to communism. Containment took many forms, from economic aid to military interventions. The Soviet Union sought to expand its influence, supporting communist movements worldwide. This ideological struggle played out globally, from Latin America to Southeast Asia. The Cold War became a global chess match, with each superpower making strategic moves. Both sides aimed to outmaneuver the other in this high-stakes game. By the 1980s, the Soviet Union began to show signs of weakness. The costs of maintaining a vast military and supporting its allies took their toll. Mikhail Gorbachev's election in 1985 marked a turning point. Gorbachev implemented policies of glasnost and perestroika, seeking to revitalize the Soviet system. These reforms hastened the Soviet Union's demise. In 1989, the Berlin Wall crumbled, symbolizing the end of the Cold War. On December 25, 1991, the Soviet Union dissolved, ending the Cold War. The Cold War's as we navigate a world shaped by 20th century